Good evening, everyone. This is the Lazy Historian, and welcome to another journey through the corridors of time. Tonight, we venture far deeper into the past to the very dawn of human civilization, the Stone Age. Before we begin, feel free to like, subscribe, and share where you're tuning in from, along with your local time. Now, prepare yourselves. Our exploration into the origins of humanity begins. You wake up, but there's no waking. You're not nestled in sheets. You're hunched. Like a fossil beneath a bearskin that still smells like its last breath. The air is cold enough to peel the inside of your nose. Welcome to the Stone Age, where bedroom means dirt and blanket means the corpse of something you killed yourself or something that kindly froze to death nearby. There's no alarm clock. Just the noise of your companion hacking phlegm into the ashes and a faint rustling that might be rodents or might be something that wants to eat you. The ceiling drips. The smoke from last night's fire still curls low, painting your lungs with a fine layer of soot. Privacy. Try explaining that to your cave mates, 10 of them, all within arm's reach, all farting in unison like a ceremonial foghorn. Outside, the world is sharper than your flint blade. You've got 3 priorities today: don't freeze, don't starve, don't die violently. Odds are, you'll fail at 1. Fire is a jealous god you're forced to woo every night. You fell asleep blowing on embers like a desperate suitor and woke up praying they are still warm. If they are out, you're one bad decision away from hypothermia. You want breakfast. There is no breakfast. There's not dying of hunger if you're lucky. You chew on yesterday's marrow-cracked bones, suck on a pine root, pretend bark is a flavor. The stomach growls, but that's not a complaint. It's just a habit. You check your tools the way a modern person checks their phone for texts. They'll never receive. Stone blade chipped. Bone scraper dulled. You'd cry, but tears freeze. Everyone sharpens their own gear. Your child, if you're unlucky enough to have one, is already playing with a shard of flint that could eviscerate a mammoth. There's no OSHA. There's barely parenting. Now comes the exodus. The foragers, mostly women and children, disappear into the frostbitten brush in search of edibles, which here means mushrooms, bugs, and regret. A single misidentified berry and its convulsions by sunset. The men. They are gearing up to throw sticks at something large and angry. No bows. No arrows. Just the physics of velocity and the hope that whatever you hit bleeds faster than it charges. Half the hunts end in failure. A third end in injury. The rest. You might eat. You might fight off a lion for a piece of its stolen kill. You might win. And by win, we mean drag back a rotting chunk of meat covered in hyena saliva and flies. Meanwhile, someone watches the children. Not because childcare is sacred, because unsupervised toddlers walk into fire pits or are carried off by wolves. No one talks about infanticide, but you all know the signs. Some babies disappear during famines. No one cries. There's no time. Midday. You're elbow deep in a still warm carcass. Gut steaming in the open air. You separate sinew from bone. With a stone knife you flaked yourself during your one quiet moment last week. Your hands are purple from cold and gore. There's no soap, no antiseptic. You might chew rawhide later to make cordage. You might wear this animal's skin tomorrow. If you survive. Thirst? There's a puddle. Maybe a snowbank. Maybe a river that hasn't birthed a cholera wave yet. Water is sacred and also full of disease. No one knows the words bacteria or dysentery, but everyone knows the look of someone too weak to squat without dying. And still, you carry on. Because there's no alternative. Night will fall again, dragging a blanket of frost and fear. The fire must be fed. The children silenced. The gods appeased. Yes, gods. Spirits. Shadows. Your dreams are no longer just dreams. They are prophesies, warnings, hallucinations from the hunger. Maybe the old man muttering by the fire is a shaman. Or maybe he's just the last person to survive dysentery. Tomorrow, if you make it, will look the same. You are not building civilization. You are clinging to its edge with cracked fingernails. You are humanity's long-shot bet. A miracle measured in frostbite, gut bacteria, and silence. This is the Stone Age. And you're already dying wrong. There's no sunrise, just a slightly less black gloom that filters through the cracks in your world of bone, hide, and dirt. You don't open your eyes. They unseal, reluctantly, gummy with smoke and dried tears. There's no bed, just a collection of skins atop packed mud, crusted with the shared drool of you, your mate, your children, and whatever parasite has laid claim to your scalp. You are not alone. You are never alone. The concept of privacy will not be invented for another 20,000 years. You sleep beside your kin, shoulder to shoulder like rotting sardines, encased in a cocoon of sweat, lice, and primal trust. Someone is breathing directly into your ear. Someone else has wet themselves in the night. You hope it was the toddler. You also hope it was urine. The fire is a memory now. Nothing but white ash and a hope that if you dig deep enough, you'll find embers, still breathing, still clinging. Without them, your fate is sealed in cold. Fire is not warmth. It is life. It is safety. It is a line in the dirt between you and the abyss. If the coals are dead, you don't light a match. You beg the nearest spark from someone else's hearth and hope they are feeling generous, or at least too tired to stab you. Outside, the air is made of knives. You are wrapped in the furs of the dead, still not warm. Your breath comes in plumes. White ghosts that vanish before you can give them names. Your fingers are numb. Not figuratively. They are already dying. You flex them to make sure they are still attached. The chill in your bones is ancestral. It doesn't just hurt, it remembers. Your cave or shelter, constructed from mammoth ribs, wood scavenged from wind-blasted trees, and stitched hide, smells like a corpse that's trying to ferment itself. Everything is damp. Damp from the earth, damp from the breath of the living. Damp from the blood of last week's kill that still stains the entrance. Nothing is dry. Nothing ever was. You light the fire. Or you try. You cup your hands around the tinder, blowing like a penitent priest. The flint strikes. Sparks dance. You whisper to them like a lover. Fire is your most fragile god. It consumes, it protects, it betrays. If the wind shifts, it kills you. If it dies, so do you. No one speaks as you coax the flame back to life. The crackle is holy. The shadows recoil. The stink of smoke begins its slow invasion of your hair. Your lungs, your unborn children. It is better than the alternative. With fire lit, the day has officially begun. You reach for what passes as clothing. Fur. Hide. Leather. Thick enough to trap some heat. Thinner than your despair. Everything stinks of old sweat and bone marrow. You don't change clothes. You add to them. Layers. Each garment a badge of survival and a catalogue of stains. You squat to stretch the stiffness from your back. Your knees creak like brittle branches. You are 28. That is considered elderly. If you survive this winter, you will be a living legend. Someone coughs. In the darkness. A bad cough. Deep. Wet. You pretend not to hear it. Because if they are sick, there's nothing to be done. You can't treat it. You can't isolate them. You share air. You share space. You share death. You step outside and the wind grates. You like a slap from your worst ancestor. Your feet hit the frozen ground and the cold leaps into your bones with malicious joy. The sun, if it exists, is a pale rumor behind the clouds. The world is grey, white, and red, red from blood, always. You relieve yourself a few steps from the shelter. Everyone does. The stench of your communal waste pit is legendary. It freezes in place like a monument to the indignity of digestion. You hope nothing followed the scent overnight. Tracks in the snow tell you that something did. You glance at the spear leaning against the wall. It's too short, too brittle, and slightly burnt at the tip. It'll have to do. You chew on a strip of dried meat, so hard it could cut your gums. Breakfast. If you're lucky, it's actual meat. If not, it's bone scrapings and fermented sorrow. No one eats well. Everyone eats just enough to try again. The children stir. They are hungry. Always. They whimper, not yet old enough to know that complaining doesn't make food appear. You hand them a chunk of root and tell them it's sweet. It's not. But they chew it anyway. Because that's life. In the Paleolithic world, you wake each day not to thrive, but to dodge extinction for another night. The cold doesn't kill you. With flair. It waits. It watches. It slides beneath your skin like a secret and takes its time. You don't worship idols. You worship fire. Not with hymns, but with frantic breath, bleeding knuckles, and the trembling reverence of someone who knows cold isn't a season, it's a predator. Fire is your first and last god. You don't pray to it. You barter. You give it wood, fat, dung, anything that burns. In return, it doesn't kill you. That's the agreement. And it's a fragile one. Because fire, for all its glory, is petty. It flares, it sulks, it dies without warning. You spend your life coaxing it back to life like a wounded animal. If you were lucky last night, you banked the embers right. Covered them in ash, insulated them with bark and hope. If not, you're now rubbing sticks together with the desperation of someone who understands that failure means frostbitten children and a corpse-shaped burden by morning. It doesn't help that your hands are shaking. Numb from cold and fatigue, blistered from yesterday's wood gathering. You strike flint against iron pyrite, again and again, each spark a tiny rebellion against the void. A few catch. You blow gently. The tinder glows. You whisper to it. And then flame. Tiny. Wavering. Beautiful. You feed it dry moss, bark shavings. Strips of hide until it grows into something alive. Not big. Just enough. Enough to warm your palms and keep the beasts of the night slightly more skeptical. Fire is your technology. Your defense. Your kitchen. Your cradle. And your curse. Because now that it lives, you are bound to it. You can't leave. You must tend it constantly, feeding it like an infant with an appetite for annihilation. If you sleep too deeply, the flame dies. If you feed it too greedily, it escapes. There is no in-between. The children know not to touch it, but sometimes they do. Small fingers blister. Skin peels. Screams echo. You have no ointments, no salves. Just dirty bandages and grim hope. Pain is a lesson. And everyone learns. Fire keeps you warm, but only in a tight radius. Beyond it, the cold waits. Not just temperature, but hunger with fangs. Wolves, bears, saber-tooths. They fear the flame. But not for long. If the wind blows wrong, or if the fire sputters, you are meat again. The circle of light is your fortress. And it is the size of a small rug. You sit close. Always too close. Your tunic scorches. Your hair smells like smoked regret. But you dare not move back. Not even for comfort. Comfort is a luxury reserved for death. Fire also cooks your food if you have any. It boils roots until they no longer fight your teeth. It sears meat and kills some of the things that would have killed you. It dries your hides, hardens your glue, smokes your fish. It is the difference between chewing a raw slug and not vomiting. Afterward. But mostly, fire is time. Fire means night doesn't devour you completely. Around it, you tell stories not because you're sentimental, but because memory is survival. Don't eat that mushroom. Don't follow the red-eyed beast. Don't leave the fire alone. The stories are warnings, carved in ash and breath. There is no writing yet. No record. Just tales repeated until they become ritual. The elders speak. The children listen. Sometimes. Most of the time they stare into the flames, hypnotized. You did too, once. Before you knew that looking too long wastes wood. There are nights the fire dies anyway. Maybe you ran out of fuel. Maybe the wind howled too hard. Maybe the gods were bored. You wake to cold like a knife to the chest. Your breath is gone. Your joints scream. You fumble in the dark, striking stone, praying in the language of panic. If you fail, there is no do-over. There is just death. Quiet. Absolute. Immediate. And so, every day, every night, you tend the flame. Not out of affection. Out of servitude. Fire doesn't love you. It tolerates you. So you guard it like a paranoid lover. You sleep with one eye open. You feed it even when you're starving. You whisper to it like it can hear you. And maybe, in a way, it does. After all, fire is the first thing you've ever met that's more unpredictable than man. And yet, without it, man would have never made it this far. Fire is not your tool. It is your overlord. And tonight, like every night, you kneel before it, offering kindling and fear. You wake up hungry. Not in the poetic, modern way where you skip brunch and post about it. This is the kind of hunger that wraps around your spine and whispers threats to your stomach lining. It's not a passing inconvenience. It's your full-time companion. The ache isn't sharp anymore. It's dull, deep, familiar, like a wound that healed wrong but never stopped hurting. You roll over, not because you're getting up, but because the part of you pressed against the cold earth has gone numb. Someone nearby is already gnawing on something. You pray it's food. You know it's not. Likely bark, a leather strap, or the last piece of sinew scraped off a bone so old it remembers a warm earth. Breakfast, if it exists, is a moral dilemma. You don't eat it. You scavenge for it. The first rule of Paleolithic mornings, don't ask where it came from. The second rule, eat fast, lie if you must, and don't make eye contact while chewing. There are no designated meals. Just moments where no one's watching and you can quietly suck marrow from a cracked femur. You step outside. Not because you want to, but because your gut is chewing on itself and the smell of the shelter is indistinguishable from the latrine. You look for something, anything. A bug, a root, a dropped berry, a miracle. Hunger makes you creative. You flip over stones to check for beetles. You chew birch bark for the illusion of flavor. If you're lucky, you find a half-frozen mushroom that might not be poisonous. If you're unlucky, it definitely is. You eat it anyway and make peace with your gods. The ground is barren. The snow crusted over. Every step crunches like breaking your own teeth. You kneel to examine claw marks near a bush. Badger, maybe. Gone now. It found food before you did. You check the bush anyway. Nothing. Not even desperation. Disguised as fruit. Your stomach growls again, louder now, performing for an audience of crows. You chew a piece of old hide, not to eat, just to convince your body something is happening. It isn't. You head back. The children are crying. They don't have the vocabulary to describe starvation yet, so they scream it. One of the elders hands you a handful of insect larvae pulled from the underbelly of a rotting log. He calls it protein. You call it humility. You swallow without chewing. It wiggles. You don't flinch. Hunger has no pride. Someone found a bird carcass. Not fresh. Not whole. Ribs exposed. Eyes gone. Half frozen, half rotting. It smells like memory loss. They peel strips of meat off with fingernails and pass it around. You get a piece the size of a coin. You suck on it like it's the last candy in a war zone. It tastes like dirt, feathers, and triumph. For a moment, the hunger goes quiet. Not satisfied, just momentarily stunned. Then it returns, sharper, like it resents being ignored. You gather with the others to plan. Foraging party leaves soon. The women and older children form a group, heading out with baskets woven from hope and sinew. They carry sharpened sticks, not for defense, but to dig. Roots, tubers, fungus. The edible ones are often indistinguishable from the fatal ones. The trick is memory. The cost of failure is a body twitching in the dirt, foaming at the mouth. Dying with a belly full of mistakes. The men prepare to hunt, if you can call it that. Hunt implies dignity, strategy. This is more like desperate ambush. You'll track something bigger than you, with better teeth and warmer fur, and try to outwit it with sharpened sticks and shouting. Odds are it escapes. If it doesn't, it fights. If you're lucky, it dies first. You've eaten once already. That's a rare privilege. Most mornings, you don't. Most mornings, you stare at your own fingers and think about biting. You remember what fat tasted like. The greasy joy of a roasted marrow core. The way it slid down your throat and made your whole body believe, for just a second, that survival was possible. That memory is a curse now. It sharpens the hunger. Makes your current meal a grub, a scrap, a fantasy, feel like mockery. But you chew anyway. Because this isn't about satisfaction. It's about momentum. Hunger isn't something to be solved. It's something to be managed, endured, swallowed like guilt. You eat what doesn't kill you. Sometimes you eat what might. And still, your belly howls. Not for fullness. That's a luxury. It howls for one more hour, one more step, one more desperate breath in a world that never cared if you were fed. You don't own anything. Not really. There's no currency, no property deeds, no Instagrammable minimalist decor. But what you do have, what everyone has, is a handful of rocks so carefully shaped they might as well be sacred. Because in this world, a dull blade is a death sentence wrapped in flint. You squat by the fire, sunlight barely filtering through the smoky haze of your shelter, and spread your tools out like relics. A scraper for hide. A blade for meat. An axe head for wood or bone or skull, depending on how the day goes. These are not things. These are your lifelines. Each one chipped, notched, and retouched so many times they look like miniature battlefields. You run a calloused thumb along the edge of your blade. Still sharp. Sharp enough to peel bark, skin a rabbit. Or cut through a rival's throat if diplomacy fails again. You hope it won't. But your tools don't hope. They are ready. Everyone sharpens. Men, women, children who can barely walk, everyone learns the geometry of survival. Flint knapping isn't art. It's not a hobby. It's an ancient form of begging the universe to spare you one more day. You sit with a rock between your legs and strike it with another, angled just right. Too soft and it dulls. Too hard and it shatters. And every piece you flake off matters, because raw flint isn't just lying around like prehistoric breadcrumbs. You dig for it, trade for it, fight over it. The best kind fractures like glass, leaves a razor-thin edge. That slices meat and fingers with equal indifference. Obsidian is ideal, but rare. Like kindness. You use what you have. Sometimes the tool breaks. It always breaks eventually. You curse, not loudly, sound carries, and you're not alone out here. You start over. This time, slower. More careful. There are no shortcuts. No machines. Just rhythm and bone memory, handed down through bloodlines. Your grandfather taught your father. Your father taught you. You'll teach someone, if you live long enough to have offspring who aren't immediately devoured by leopards. A successful tool means time. Not comfort. Time. Less time cutting meat. Less time scraping hides. Less time exposed to the biting wind and wandering predators. A good blade buys you hours. A great one might buy you a life. That's the economy here. Stones for seconds. Your scraper is dull. You take a piece of antler and reshape the edge. The process is meditative in the way that only repetitive anxiety can be. Sparks fly. Chips flake. You lose track of time. The children mimic you, their tiny hands awkward but determined. They'll learn. Or they'll die trying. Either way, the world moves on. You test the point of your spear. It's not just a hunting tool. It's your insurance policy. Your last argument in any conversation that gets too loud. The shaft is ashwood, seasoned and wrapped in sinew. The tip, carved and fire-hardened, then hafted with pitch and gut. You stare at it, not with pride, but suspicion. Will it hold? Will it snap mid-charge, leaving you alone with nothing but your slow reflexes and a prayer to a god made of weather? You sharpen anyway. Not because it guarantees survival, but because not sharpening guarantees death. There's a flake of red ochre on your knife handle. Someone once said it brings luck. More likely, it hides the blood. You leave it there. Everyone has a favorite tool. Not sentimental, functional. Maybe it's a scraper that's lasted 3 seasons, or a hand axe with a handle that fits your grip. Like a secret. You guard it. Sleep beside it. If you lose it, you mourn. Not because you're attached. Because starting over takes time you might not have. Someone's sharpening behind you. You can hear the stone on stone, rhythmic and precise. It's comforting in a grim way. A community of people who know their mortality is one dull edge away. There's no forge. No iron. No bronze. Just stone, bone, and fire. And every advancement is paid in blood. Maybe one day your descendants will mine or smelt metal, build cities. But today you're a creature hunched over a rock, flaking edges into existence and hoping your hands don't freeze before your spear finds something with a heartbeat. Tools aren't tools. They are the thin line between ritual and rot. You sharpen. You test. You pray to no one. Because in this world, the gods are sharp and silent, and you make them with your own 2 hands. They don't leave with fanfare. There are no trumpets, no waving handkerchiefs, no emotional speeches about duty or legacy. The foragers leave like smoke, quiet, necessary, and always slightly doomed. It's early. The sky hasn't decided whether to be grey or black, and the frost still clings to every surface like it's owed rent. The women rise first, not because they are morning people, but because hunger is punctual and the children won't stop crying just because the sun's asleep. Some of them carry baskets woven from reeds and sinew. Others just carry scars from the last trip. The older children go too, not because it's a field trip, but because if they don't learn now, they'll die later. Education is a root you pull from the ground, inspect, and either eat or never speak of again because it killed your cousin. There is no classroom. There is no curriculum. There is only memory, trial, and error, mostly error. You watch them vanish into the brush, the forest swallowing them one layer at a time. One of them limps. Another coughs. They don't talk much. Conversation wastes breath, and breath keeps your fingers warm. Every step forward is a decision. The terrain isn't friendly. It's not even indifferent. It's actively hostile. You walk through mud that sucks at your ankles like a drowning man. You slip on roots slick with last night's ice. You duck under branches that snag your hide clothing and whisper old curses. The world was not made for your comfort. It barely tolerates your existence. The foragers fan out, not because it's strategic, but because if one person dies, the rest still get to eat. That's the math. That's always been the math. They search with the desperate precision of people who've watched others die for mistaking water hemlock for wild parsley. The edible plants all look like their deadly cousins. Trial and error used to mean a mild inconvenience. Here, it means a funeral that smells like vomit and ends with a hasty burial under stones and silence. One child spots something. A cluster of mushrooms. He looks up, wide-eyed, waiting for confirmation. The elder with the scarred hand nods once. Just once. That's enough. He plucks them, careful not to disturb the nearby patch that looks identical but kills more efficiently than a spear. Knowledge here isn't a treasure. It's a burden. Every plant, every insect, every fungus is a story. Some are good. Most are cautionary tales carved into memories with teeth. They find beetle grubs under a fallen log. Rich in fat, slightly crunchy, vaguely horrifying. But no one hesitates. They fill their baskets. Protein is protein. They chew while they work. Survival doesn't pause for dignity. Someone spots tracks, deer, maybe. Not their job, but noted. They move on. The women bend to dig at a patch of soil that hides cattail roots. They taste like fibrous glue but provide starch. The children help, their fingers blue with cold, their bellies groaning like dying dogs. No one complains. Complaining doesn't summon food. One girl reaches for berries. Red, bright, perfect. A hand slaps hers away. A whispered word, poison. She remembers. She won't forget again. She might survive long enough to teach someone else. That's the entire educational model, survive and inform. They work for hours. Kneeling, stooping, squatting. A full day of backbreaking scavenging for a handful of calories. And yet, somehow, it matters. Every root. Every insect. Every misshapen mushroom is a ticket to tomorrow. If they bring back enough, there will be something warm to chew by the fire. If not, there will be cold stares and louder stomachs. They do not return triumphant. They return exhausted, frostbitten, and covered in dirt. Their baskets are half full. That's a success. One of the children is missing. No one speaks. They wait. 5 minutes. 10. Then the rustling. He returns, face scratched, holding a stick with a dead lizard skewered through its belly. He is a hero for the next 12 hours. Then he's a liability. Again. Such is life. The tribe gathers to see the whole. There is no praise, just redistribution. The elders take their cut. The children chew the grubs first, they digest better when small. The men grunt approval, already calculating whether the protein means a longer hunt tomorrow. No one thanks the foragers. Their reward is survival. Their punishment is doing it again at dawn. There are no medals. Only memories. And the occasional reminder that one wrong route can undo 20,000 years of evolution. You don't hunt because it's noble. You don't hunt for pride or sport or ritual. You hunt because the alternative is watching your children starve while your bones hollow out from the inside. The sun hasn't even cleared the tree line when the hunters assemble men, sometimes women, the strongest, the fastest, or at least the least recently injured. Spears are checked. Atlatls tested. These are not sleek weapons. They are crooked sticks tipped with obsidian and anxiety, thrown with more hope than precision. You walk quietly. Not because you are wise, but because noise gets you killed. The world you move through is not empty. It is filled with creatures larger, faster, and hungrier than you. You are not apex. You are ambitious prey. The forest is damp, the cold clawing up your legs. Each step is a negotiation with hidden roots and silent thorns. You leave no trail. Not because you're clever, but because you can't afford to be followed. The group spreads out. Not too far. Just enough to cover more ground without dying alone. Someone spots tracks, hooved, recent. The group pauses, the air thick with possibility. A whispered grunt, a nod. The trail is followed. You crouch near dung, still steaming. The smell is awful. That's good. It means it's fresh. You press a hand to the earth. It's wet. You are not surprised. Nothing here is dry except your optimism. The pursuit begins. Slow, measured. You follow the trail like it owes you money. The tracks weave through brush, over streambeds, around boulders. The prey is cautious. Smarter than it looks. Smarter than you, maybe. Hours pass. Feet ache. Back stiffen. One man slips. A stone cuts his palm. He hisses but keeps moving. Blood is just a tax. You lose the trail. Then find it again. A tuft of hair snagged on bark. A broken branch. A disturbed patch of soil. Each clue a whisper, I was here. Try harder. Finally, movement, a flash of brown muscle in the distance. The group freezes. Time halts. Breath is shared like contraband. Then the signal. You move. Fast. Quiet. Together. The atlatls rise, spears not thrown but released, a flick of the wrist that sends stone points singing toward destiny or disappointment. They miss. All of them. The deer bolts. The woods explode with noise. You chase. Not because it's smart, but because momentum is all you have. You run. You leap over roots, slide down embankments, crash through brush. Your lungs burn. Your legs scream. Your stomach betrays you with each step reminding you of how little fuel you've earned this week. The deer is fast. You are determined. It gains ground. Then slows. It's wounded, one spear grazed its flank. Blood marks its trail. Now it bleeds, and you follow that story through the underbrush like a holy text. You find it again. Cornered. Exhausted. It kicks, but weakly. Another spear flies. This one finds a lung. It drops. You surround it, breathing like dying gods. The final blow is quick. Not clean. The throat opened with a jagged stone blade. Blood steams in the cold. The forest watches. The silence after is sacred. No one speaks. The animal shudders, then stills. You kneel, press a hand to its flank. It's still warm. That warmth is your reward, your meal, your survival. You got it there. No ceremony. Just necessity. The organs are removed, inspected. The liver is good. The stomach, not ruptured. This is luck. Or mercy. Or coincidence. You hack off limbs. Divide the weight. Everyone carries something. You will not waste this. The hide will be scraped, dried, worn. The sinew turned to thread. The bones, tools. The skull, a lesson. You trek back in silence, blood drying on your hands, meat dragging behind you like a promise kept. Back at the shelter, they see you coming. The children cheer, then fight over who gets the first scrap. The women take the meat. Begin cutting, salting, drying. Smoke rises. It smells like hope. You sit. Exhausted. Satisfied. Not full, but less empty. You survive the hunt. This time. Tomorrow, it starts again. Because the meat runs out fast. The cold never leaves. And hunger is always just one missed throw away. There is no glory in this. No epic tale. Just a dead deer, sore feet, and the quiet pride of a predator that almost didn't make it. You don't find the kill. You smell it. Long before you see the blood-slick grass or the ribcage splayed open like a broken gate, your nostrils twitch. At the stink of rot and violence. The scent is old copper and wet fur, a scent every scavenger knows not to trust. Because if something bled here, something bled it. And it might still be watching. Scavenging isn't plan B. It's not failure. It's strategy. Risk management. You're not a hunter today. You're a thief with a death wish. The kill site is fresh. Not hours old, maybe minutes. A hoofed animal, maybe aurochs, maybe bison, now reduced to steaming meat and red bone. The predator did not clean up after itself. They never do. They gorge, then sleep. Or guard. Or circle back. You crouch in the underbrush, heart pounding like a drum carved from your own ribs, eyes scanning for ears, tails, twitching silhouettes. In the grass. You're not alone. Others from your group have flanked left and right, stone tools grip tight. No one speaks. Scavenging requires silence, speed, and a very flexible relationship with fear. You listen. Nothing but wind, flies, and the quiet squelch of blood-softened earth underfoot. Maybe the predator is gone. Maybe it's just waiting to see which fool wants to borrow its leftovers. You move in. Not fast. Not slow. Measured. The meat is still warm. That's bad. That's good. That's all you need to know. A lion, maybe. Or a pack of wolves. The bites are ragged, deliberate. Not the work of hyenas, they leave less to guess. You slice at a haunch with a flint blade so sharp it could divide atoms if it believed in them. The meat comes away with a sucking noise that makes your stomach lurch and your mouth water. Hunger is disloyal like that. You fill your pack. Fast. Efficient. Skin, meat, tendon, chunks of internal fat. No time to be choosy. No time to gag. Every second here is a wager against the next sound being claws on rock or breath behind your shoulder. Then it comes, the warning grunt. Low. Deep. Unmistakable. One of the younger scavengers freezes. Another bolts. You do neither. You don't look back. You keep cutting. You finish the piece. Then you run. Not like a deer. Like a human. Upright. Terrified. Strategically selfish. You don't scream. Screaming wastes air. You just run until your feet go numb, your throat burns, and your heart beats so loud you can't hear the growling anymore. Back at camp, you drop the meat like a holy offering. The others crowd around, inspecting for parasites, bruising, anything that screams, "This was not our kill." But they eat anyway. Because hunger is louder than caution. The one who froze. He comes back limping, shaken, missing a chunk of hide from his leg. Not bitten. Scraped from diving into a thorn bush. It could have been worse. It usually is. The scavenged meat goes fast. It's fatty, rich, dangerous. People chew slower when it's stolen. As if savoring is an apology to whatever beast you stole it from. But no one wastes a bite. Even the marrow is sucked, the bones cracked with stones, the grease smeared on cheeks like war paint and aftershave. You sit back, shaking. Not from fear, but from the adrenaline hangover. The cold creeps in again, wrapping around your joints, reminding you that the warmth you feel is not comfort. It's borrowed time. Scavenging is not glorious. There's no ritual for it, no myths, no songs. No one wants to admit that sometimes your next meal depends on being slightly faster than the predator that earned it. But scavengers survive. More than hunters. More than the ones who prey too loudly or charge too boldly. Scavengers eat. They limp. They get old. Sometimes they even tell the story. Though they never make themselves the hero. Because in this story, the hero is the lion. And you were just lucky enough not to meet it. There are no lullabies here, no nursery rhymes, no pastel cribs lined with stuffed woolen animals that reassure. Your safety is real. There is only the sound of a baby wailing over the low crackle of fire and the occasional shriek that means one of the toddlers got too close to the embers again. You don't raise children. You guard them like smoke. You cradle them with one eye always on the tree line, half listening for rustling that means something hungry has breached the perimeter. There are no schools, no playdates, no formal rites of passage, just the unending test of not dying before your first tooth rots out. Childhood here is not innocence. It is incompetence that must be forcibly shaped into survival instinct. Children don't learn by being taught. They learn by mimicking. They watch you skin a rabbit, then they practice on a frog. They see you carve a spear tip, and next thing you know, one of them's bleeding from the thigh after trying it with the sharp end facing the wrong way. You don't scold. You nod. The wound teaches better than your voice ever could. And if they stop crying fast enough, you know they might live long enough to be useful. Play exists, but it's indistinguishable from training. A child throws stones at a squirrel, not for fun, but because one day that squirrel will be a deer and the stone will be a spear and the aim will decide whether they get to eat or just watch others chew. Dolls, if they exist, are made of bark and bone, bound with sinew and hollow-eyed. Their limbs don't bend. Their faces don't smile. They look more like something from a fever dream than a toy, but the children cradle them anyway because imagination is cheaper than food. You watch them constantly. Not because you want to, but because you must. The world outside is a kill zone, and everything smaller than an adolescent can vanish in a blink. A baby rolls too close to the fire pit, burns. A toddler follows a bird. Too far from camp, gone. A curious child drinks from the wrong puddle, dead by dusk. And in the background, the whisper of infanticide, always unspoken but never forgotten. When the famine deepens and mouths outnumber meals, you don't explain it. You just wake up and the baby is gone and no one makes eye contact with the mother for 3 days. She doesn't ask questions. She knows. You all do. Parenting is communal. The whole group watches all the children, and by watch, we mean prevent them from dying until they are old enough to contribute. No one counts how many they've birthed. They count how many have survived the winter. That's the real number. There's no baby talk, no cooing, no developmental milestones recorded in cave pigment. There's just walking, then working. If a child can carry a stick without stabbing themselves, they are ready to help gather firewood. If they can chew gristle without choking, they are ready for dried meat. If they cry too often, they are a liability. Predators can hear crying. So can rival tribes. So can everyone who's already exhausted and angry and malnourished and wondering. If one less voice would mean one more spoonful. You want to believe you're better than this. That you're civilized enough not to look at your own offspring and calculate calories. But then the snow comes early. Then the forage basket returns. Half empty. Then the meat turns sour faster than you can smoke it. And you look at the smallest, weakest, loudest member of your group and wonder, just for a moment, what they would want if they understood. You don't act on it. Not this time. But someone might. Someone always might. And tomorrow, that child will not be here. And no one will speak of it. Watching the children means watching the line between humanity and something colder. It means laughing when they say something strange, handing them a beetle to eat, wrapping them in fur when they sleep so they don't freeze before morning. It means knowing that each one is both miracle and burden. And if you're lucky, if you survive long enough to see it, they will be the ones watching when it's your turn to be frail and useless and crying too loudly in the night. And they will remember. Or they won't. Survival doesn't care. It just keeps counting. It starts with the smell. Not the clean, briny scent of supermarket meat. This is hot blood, wet fur, and the lingering musk of fear. You don't carve dinner. You dismantle a life. The animal lies on its side, eyes clouded, limbs stiffening. A successful hunt, they called it. But success is just a polite word for the slaughter you now have to turn into calories. The ground beneath it is soaked red, steaming against the cold. You crouch, stone blade in hand, and begin the ritual that has no altar, no priest, just muscle memory and a deadline. Because rot sets in fast, and if you don't work faster, your hard-won meat becomes a buffet for flies, bacteria, and every carrion feeder in a 3-mile radius. You slice through hide. Not gracefully, this isn't surgery. It's war. You cut and peel, skin separating with a sound like wet paper tearing. The stench intensifies. You fight the urge to gag. Everyone does. You pretend it doesn't get to you. That this is just another day, just another creature unlucky enough to die so you could live a little longer. You peel the hide back in strips, revealing flesh, sinew, yellow fat. It glistens, almost beautiful, like anatomy textbook pages soaked in oil. You don't pause to admire. You keep cutting. The limbs are disarticulated next, joints twisted until they pop, tendons sliced with flint so sharp it hums in your hand. Blood pools around your knees. Your hands are slick. You wipe them on your tunic, on your leg, on your face without thinking. Everyone is blood-stained. Everyone looks like a murderer. Because everyone is. The division of labor kicks in. This is not a solo act. One person pulls sinew for thread. Another carves fat to be rendered into grease. Children collect the intestines, slippery and foul, to be cleaned and reused. The brain is kept. It will be smeared onto hides later, the fats helping to soften the leather. Nothing is wasted. Nothing can be. The skull is split to access the brain. The bones are cracked for marrow. Even the hooves are saved for glue. The liver is inspected. If it's pale or spotted, the meat might be cursed. If it's healthy, it's devoured raw by the elder. Tradition, they say. Or superstition. Or just hunger dressed up in belief. The butchering takes hours. Your back cramps. Your knees ache. Your fingers sting from cold and repetitive cutting. You don't stop. You don't complain. This is the cost of eating. You think of the animal, how it looked before you turned it into parts. It's hard to remember. Death erases personality quickly. It is no longer a deer or an elk or a boar. It is meat, hide, tools. A resource. And you are the processor. Your ancestors might one day build machines to do this work. But for now, it's just you and a dulling blade and the wet sound of utility. Someone laughs. Not joyfully. The kind of laughter that bubbles up when you're too tired to scream. Someone else gags. A third cuts too deep, slicing a tendon. Blood arcs. They hiss, then slap a strip of hide over the wound. No bandages. No ointments. Just pressure and denial. By the end, you are covered in gore, hair matted, boots soaked, smelling like iron and animal and effort. You stand, bones creaking, and look at the pile. Meat, bones, organs, hide. Nothing wasted. Everything earned. You are not proud. You are not revolted. You are just very, very tired. The sun is lower now. Flies are gathering. The meat must be smoked, dried, or boiled before nightfall. The predators will come. They always do. They smell what you smell. They want what you want. And they don't care that you worked harder for it. You carry what you can back to the shelter. It's heavy. Everything is heavy. The meat. The tools. The knowledge that you'll have to do this again. Soon. Because the food never lasts. It never fills. It just delays. This is not feast. This is triage. You eat because you killed. You kill because you must. And tomorrow you'll do it again. Hoping your blade stays sharp and your hands steady and your stomach quiet long enough to finish the job. Because out here, the blood never dries for long. And the next kill is already watching. The meat doesn't last. That's the first rule. It doesn't matter how hard you hunted, how precisely you carved, how reverently you draped each strip of flesh over the drying rack. Within hours, the flies arrive. Not one or two, but a humming, seething congregation of wings and legs and greed. They crawl into every crevice, lay eggs in the folds, and when the sun warms the flesh even slightly, it's like the carcass has been reborn, except now it writhes. You try to wave them off, but your arms get tired before their wings do. You fan smoke toward the meat, a trick passed down through irritation rather than innovation, and for a moment the insects retreat. Then they return, as they always do, more determined, more fecund, more inevitable. Rot begins before the chewing ends. The meat sours in the air, its surface slick with sweat, its color shifting from red to gray to a shade you don't name because naming things gives them power. The smell is a persistent. It clings to your hair, your clothes, the inside of your nostrils. You get used to it like you get used to the cold or the constant itch of lice by losing the capacity to notice. Flies aren't just a nuisance. They're a sign. Where they are, disease follows. Eggs become maggots, maggots become new flies, and in between they burrow through muscle with the calm detachment of creatures who don't care that their lunch was once your victory. You pick them out with a stick. You flick them onto the ground. The chickens, if you had any, would eat them. But you don't have chickens. You have fire and hope. And both are fading. You try preserving the meat. Smoke it over the fire. Dry it in strips over bark. But the weather fights you. If the air's too damp, the flesh turns soft. If it's too cold, it freezes, then thaws. Then freezes again, like a sad cycle of promise and decay. You watch your food sweat and wither, and you know that tomorrow it might be poison. But you'll eat it anyway. Because fresh meat is a myth. Everything is spoiled. The only question is how spoiled and how brave you feel today. Someone got sick yesterday. Heavier stool than usual, then looser, then red. He moaned through the night, cold around his belly like he could strangle the pain into submission. He's quieter now. That's not good. Silence doesn't mean healing. It means dehydration, resignation, the body turning inward in defeat. There are no doctors. Just people who aren't sick yet. You try herbs. Charcoal. Bark. A boiled concoction of roots you can't pronounce. Maybe it helps. Maybe it shortens the agony from days to hours. Maybe it just gives him something to vomit besides bile. Diarrhea kills more people than spears ever did. A bad piece of meat can turn your insides into a leaking pipe. The flies don't care. They land on his lips, crawl into his mouth. You brush them away, then they land on your food again. The cycle is perfect. Vicious. Intact. You start boiling everything. Meat, water, even roots. The fire burns all day. But it's not for warmth anymore. It's to kill what you can't see. And even then, it fails. You chew slowly, testing each bite for that sharp edge of wrongness. Is it too sour? Too soft? Too warm? Then you swallow and pray your stomach is feeling strong today. Flies fill your ears, your eyes, your dreams. You swat them reflexively, even in sleep. You dream of a world without them and wake to their legs on your eyelids. They don't sleep. They feed. They breed. They wait. You hear of other tribes burying their meat, storing it in cold earth. That works, sometimes. Until the meat freezes. Solid and takes an hour to chip free, by which time you've already gnawed bark out of desperation. So you keep drying, keep boiling, keep burning, and keep watching the flies land anyway. Because this is how it works. You hunt, you butcher. You store, and then you lose. A little bit every day. To time. To decay. To wings. And you accept it. Because you can't kill all the flies. But you can eat faster than they can ruin everything. Sometimes. Maybe. If you're lucky. And if not, you'll spend the next day curled up in the fetal position, sweating through your only tunic, trying not to vomit up the last piece of sustenance you risked your life for. All while the flies wait. Patient. Eternal. Already licking their legs. You don't just kill to eat. You kill to clothe, to carry, to shelter, to scrape, to stitch. Every part of the carcass has a purpose, and wasting any of it isn't just shameful, it's suicidal. The moment the animal stops twitching, the countdown begins, the clock is ticking on how fast you can turn steaming flesh into tools of survival before the rot takes it all back. The hide comes first. Peeled while it's still warm, it pulls easier that way, like tearing the skin off a fruit that fights back. You stretch it over a frame, branches lashed together with gut, smoke swirling beneath it to keep the flies distracted. You don't tan it with chemicals. You don't have chemicals. You have brains. Literally. The fatty tissue in an animal's brain emulsifies with water and turns into a paste that softens hide. So you mash it up, smear it in, and knead it for hours with aching fingers until it stops feeling like meat and starts feeling like clothing. If the hide is too thick, you scrape it with a flint scraper until your hands blister. If it's too thin, it tears mid-process and becomes a useless flag of failure flapping in the wind. You sew with bone needles, polished to a point fine enough to pierce leather, and thread made from twisted sinew pulled from the animal's own leg tendons. No thimbles. No luxury. Every stitch risks blood, yours. You prick yourself dozens of times a day, and infection is never more than one dirty wound away. Your hands crack. Your fingernails blacken. You don't complain. You keep sewing. Clothing isn't fashion. It's armor against wind, frost, thorns, shame. A well-made tunic is a second skin, warmer, more reliable, less likely to tear open and let the cold claim you. Footwear is essential. You shape it from hide, fur inward. No soles. Just padding stitched tight and tied with cords that dig into your ankles but at least keep your toes attached. Mittens, hoods, caps, they are not accessories. They are the difference between frostbite and fingers. Children help by softening strips of leather between their teeth. They gnaw, spit, chew again. It keeps them quiet and useful, and if they swallow a little fur in the process, well, that's roughage. Bones are not thrown away. Long bones are snapped open for marrow, then sharpened into awls, fishhooks, needles. The shoulder blades can be carved into spades for digging. The skull becomes a bowl or a symbol or a warning. You decide which based on how hungry you still are. Teeth are threaded into necklaces not for beauty, but for memory. A predator's tooth around your neck might mean luck, or simply proof that something once tried to eat you and failed. The ribs, curved and strong, form parts of shelters or stretchers. Even the tail can be dried, braided, turned into a handle or strap. Nothing is wasted. There's a hierarchy of usefulness, and you know it by heart. You're not an artist. You're an engineer working with decomposing material and existential dread. The work smells awful. Blood, bile, smoke, sweat, the acrid tang of scorched hair. You breathe through your mouth until you realize that just tastes worse. The skinning knife dulls after every session. You sharpen it on stone, sparks flaring. As the edge returns, barely. When the flint wears down, you chip a new edge. When your hands go numb, you shove them under your armpits until they remember how to move. There's no break. No second shift. The animal doesn't preserve itself. You don't craft for joy. You craft because the weather won't wait, and hunger is only the first enemy. Cold is crueler. Crafting is community, too. You sit near the fire with others, hunched and silent, the flicker of flame casting shadows that dance across your blood-stained hands. No one talks much. Talking wastes breath. And everyone's counting in their head how many more garments, how many more tools, how many more children need winter shoes before the next blizzard. You finish a pouch. Simple, sewn from rabbit hide. You rub it with ash to keep the bugs out. You slide a stone blade inside, cinch it with a tendon cord, hang it from your belt. It swings against your hip like a talisman. You've turned death into something useful. Again. And tomorrow, you'll do it again. Until your hands fall off. Or your eyes go blind from smoke. Or someone finally kills a bigger animal. Whichever comes first. Because out here, everything is meat. Everything is function. And every stitch is a prayer you make with a needle and thread made from the veins of something that no longer needs them. You drink because you have to. Not because it's clean, or safe, or smells anything better than a stagnant footbath full of frog spawn and decomposing leaf mush. You drink because your mouth feels like dried hide and your organs are starting to whisper threats. You squat by a muddy pool, water dark with silt and secrets, and you cup your hand like that somehow filters out the leeches. It doesn't. The puddle stares back at you, opaque and indifferent. This is not a spring bubbling forth from some mythical mountain. This is runoff from yesterday's rain mixed with animal tracks, dung residue, and whatever microscopic ecosystem lives in the bottom layer. There's no boiling. Not this time. Firewood is scarce and energy scarcer. You'd boil your water if you could, but the fire's busy keeping a baby from turning blue and drying meat that's already turning. So you drink. Quick. Shallow sips. Not because you're cautious, but because you don't want to see what's wriggling at the bottom. There's no such thing as pure water here. There's water that doesn't immediately make your insides try to escape. That's the bar. That's the standard. You pull back from the pool, wipe your mouth on your sleeve, try not to think about the squirming tickle in your throat. There are stories, of course. Warnings. The man who drank from the still pool near the rotted tree and spent the next 3 days vomiting until his eyes bled. The woman who scooped water from a stream that looked clean until she pulled up a handful of bloodsuckers. The child who drank after scavenging and didn't last the night. These aren't legends. They're yesterday. Maybe last week. Maybe tomorrow. Parasites are not folklore, they're residents. And they love a warm host who doesn't ask questions. Diarrhea is common. You don't even react anymore when it hits. You just squat, grimace, wipe, and pretend your body isn't trying to dehydrate itself to death. Cholera, dysentery, and other microbial guests are less frequent but far more theatrical. Fever, vomiting, hallucinations. You've seen someone wander into the woods naked and raving, convinced the spirits told him to dig a hole to the underworld. You found him 3 days later. Half buried. Half eaten. Probably not by spirits. But you're still not sure. Sometimes you get lucky. Melted snow in spring, trickling down the rocks, cold and nearly sterile. But you can't rely on snow. It's not always there, and when it is, it takes time to gather and melt. You chew ice occasionally, let it numb your teeth, hope it wasn't stepped in by something large and incontinent. You tried storing water once in a hollowed-out gourd sealed with hide. It worked for a while. Until the mold took over and turned it into a living science experiment. You drank it anyway. Survival tastes like compromise. Blood is another option. Warm, metallic, fresh from a kill. Not pleasant, but hydrating. Some elders swear by it, keeps the strength in your bones, they say. You think it just keeps the death slower. You've also chewed certain plants. Ones that hold moisture without murdering your kidneys. Roots that swell when boiled. Tubers that ooze a liquid you pretend is refreshing. You've seen people cut vines and tilt their heads back as clear sap trickled down like a gift from a God that doesn't exist. It helps. Sometimes. Other times it numbs your tongue and makes your vision blur. There's no label. No dosage. Just trust, experience, and the occasional funeral. Drinking is communal. You pass the same water skin around, everyone taking a sip. Pretending you're not sharing more than thirst. Bacteria are social. So are you. The only real solution would be to move constantly, follow the freshest sources, outrun the rot. But you can't. Not with children. Not with injured. Not when every move risks exposure, predators, and losing what little shelter you've built. So you drink what you have. And you hope. Not that it's clean. Just that it doesn't kill you too quickly. If you're lucky, you only get a stomachache. If you're really lucky, you get to keep the water down long enough to hunt again. To chew bark. To stare at the sky and wonder what real cleanliness might feel like. If it exists at all. You don't crave purity anymore. You crave functionality. Water that hurts less than thirst. That's it. That's the whole ask. And even that, most days, is too much. You don't get better. You get lucky. You don't heal. You survive around the wound. You don't recover. You adapt to the pain until it becomes part of your gait, part of your sleep, part of your silence. When you're injured, there are no salves waiting in a box, no tablets wrapped in foil. There's a fire, a knife, a pouch of bitter-smelling leaves, and the distant memory of someone who died trying the same thing last season. You cut yourself on a stone scraper. Not badly. Just a nick. You wash it with cold water because there's nothing else. No alcohol, no antiseptic. Maybe you smear ash into it. Maybe you remember an elder saying that keeps the spirits out. Or the flies. You bind it with hide, or fur, or your own ragged sleeve, and wait. It throbs. That's normal. It swells. That's expected. You get a fever. That's the real test. Your body shakes. You sweat through the night and hallucinate visions you tell no one about. The group watches but doesn't intervene. There's nothing to do except wait. If you make it through the second night, they'll say you're strong. If you don't, they'll say you were marked. If the wound turns black, if it smells sweet, if maggots start to feed before you can cut them out, then someone will ask for the fire. They'll heat the bone knife until it glows red and they'll hold you down, and you'll scream so loudly. The trees will echo it back like they're mocking you. They don't amputate to save your life. They amputate so your corpse doesn't rot in the shelter. Broken bones are worse. You fall, you twist something, and suddenly your leg bends in a new and exciting direction. There are no splints waiting. You find a stick. You tie it as straight as you can with wet sinew. Someone grips your ankle. Another your thigh. They pull. Hard. The scream is involuntary. Everyone has a story about a man who bit through his own tongue trying not to cry out. They say that's bravery. You say it's anatomy. If the bone sets well, you limp for the rest of your life. If it doesn't, you crawl. No one carries you for long. You are either useful or a burden, and sentiment is a luxury this climate does not afford. Childbirth is an ordeal few survive more than once. No doctors. No midwives. Just other women, experience, and fingers crossed so tightly they turn white. The mother squats by the fire, grits her teeth, and hopes the child comes fast and forward. If it comes breech, sideways, tangled in the cord, well, then you make peace quickly. A clean birth is a myth. There's blood, screaming, tearing. If the mother lives, she's hollowed out. If she doesn't, the baby gets passed off and no one speaks of it again. You lose teeth. You don't replace them. They rot, turn black, ache for weeks, and then fall out or get knocked out in a fight. You chew with the side that still works. When that's gone, you gum your meat, suck marrow, and stare at the fire hoping you don't choke before your stomach fills. Eyes cloud. Ears go deaf. Joints swell like overcooked roots. There's no correction, no intervention, only adaptation and quiet suffering. Old age isn't measured in years but in how slowly you die. There are herbs, yes. Some roots number pain. Some leaves calm a cough. Others knock you out long enough to sleep through the worst of it. You gather them from memory and desperation. There's no certainty. What cured one man last spring killed a woman the season before. But you try. Because trying is all you have. Maggots are useful if you can stomach them. They eat dead tissue and leave the live parts alone. That's the theory. The practice is lying very still while your wound becomes a buffet. And when the buzzing stops, you hope the infection went with it. Shamans, if you're lucky enough to have one, mix healing with theater. Smoke, chants, painted faces, bones rattled in gourds. Some say they commune with spirits. Others say they guess well. When they succeed, they are divine. When they fail, you bury them with the rest. You get used to the smell of rot, of pus, of burnt hair and open sores. You joke about it, quietly. Dark humor keeps the despair from boiling over. If it smells sweet, it's death, you whisper. If it smells bitter, it's the medicine. No one laughs out loud. Laughter wastes energy. So you sit by the fire, blade in hand, wound wrapped in prayer and bark, and wait. Because healing is not guaranteed. It's not even common. It's just one more battle between your flesh and everything trying to dig its way in. And most days, the flesh loses. The first thing you notice is the silence. Not the usual hush of a windless day, but the heavy, blanketing kind, the kind that settles over the group like fog made of breath held too long. Someone has died. Again. It's not surprising. Death visits often, never knocks. It just comes in, takes what it wants, and leaves the rest of you staring at the place where life used to be. This time it's a child. Small, light, barely 10 winters. Her breath stopped in the night, maybe from infection, maybe from cold, maybe because the universe was bored. You don't ask. You don't cry. Not yet. The mother doesn't wail. She just sits, unmoving, as if stillness can rewind time. Around her, the others begin the work. Because the body cannot stay. It draws flies. Predators. Spirits, if you believe in them. And even if you don't, everyone acts like they do. A burial pit is dug, shallow, narrow, just wide enough. The soil is hard. The ground frozen at the edges. The men use stone tools. And their bare hands. Dirt piles beside them like the weight of accumulated grief. No words are said. No eulogy, no ceremony. Just labor. Survival has no room for performance. The body is wrapped in hide, stiff, untreated, not for respect but for practicality. Skin dries slower when wrapped, gives the earth more time to reclaim it. Sometimes ochre is smeared on the face and hands. Not because it's sacred. Because someone once said it keeps evil away. You repeat it because rituals are easier than reasoning. You carry her, arms stiff, eyes open, the weight barely noticeable. She's lowered in gently, head facing east. Or maybe west. No one agrees on direction. The important part is covering her quickly. Dirt shoveled fast, compacted, stones placed to keep animals out. A crude can, a silent agreement. She will not be mentioned again. Mourning is not a luxury you can afford. Grief makes your hands shake. Grief makes you slow to react. Grief gets you killed. So instead, you push it down. Like everything else. And you keep moving. Children die the most. Exposure, illness, starvation, accidents. They wander too close to rivers and don't come back. They sleep through a frost and never wake. They eat the wrong berry, touch the wrong insect, run into the wrong predator's path. You bury them small and often. Elders die too. But fewer reach that title. An elder is anyone who remembers a famine no one else does. Anyone with grey hair and at least half their teeth. When they die, the burial is the same. Slightly slower, maybe. Slightly more careful. But not grand. The group cannot pause. The living still hunger. Still ache. Still freeze. You don't burn bodies. Firewood is too precious. You don't place markers. Stones move. Trees fall. Time eats memory faster than the wind eats your skin. Sometimes bones are kept. A femur becomes a flute. A skull placed on a shelf as a warning or a talisman. Children asked whose it was. Adults shrug. Someone who didn't run fast enough. Everyone chuckles. Everyone stops smiling when the fire dims. If the death was violent, by animal, by rival, by mistake, there's tension. Blood must be answered. Not always by revenge. But by ritual, cleansing, distance. The spot where they fell might be avoided. Marked as cursed. Some refuse to sleep there again. Others spit on it before walking past. There are no gods, just fears. Wrapped in repetition. Sometimes you hear stories of tribes who eat their dead. Not for nourishment, but for remembrance. You consider it. Briefly. Then go back to scraping a hide, ignoring the gnawing in your stomach. You see the faces of the dead in dreams. They don't speak. They just watch. You wake up sweating, shivering, clutching a stone blade as if you can carve the fear out. You don't tell anyone. They just nod. They've seen the watchers too. The children forget. They grow. They stumble past the burial sites, playing near the cans. You say nothing. You envy them. You work. You sharpen your tools. You check the meat. You patch the shelter. You pretend there isn't a body cooling a few feet away. You bury the dead. Not because it's sacred. Because it's necessary. Because rot is faster than memory. And because survival doesn't wait for sorrow. You don't have religion. You have fear, ritualized. There are no priests, no temples, no scrolls inked in divine decree, just firelight stories and the bones of the dead arranged in ways that feel less like logic and more like bargaining. Your world is ruled by things you can't see, the cold breath of wind through the cave that sounds like someone whispering your name, the sudden death of a healthy child, the dreams where animals speak in riddles and blood flows backward. You call them spirits. Or shadows. Or ancestors. The name doesn't matter. What matters is that you behave. Every death has a reason, even if the reason is unknowable. You blame the bones. You keep them close, but not too close. Skulls on shelves. Femurs tucked behind sleeping mats. Jawbones buried beneath hearthstones, facing east. That part is important. East means warmth. West means endings. Or maybe the other way around. No one agrees, but everyone obeys. Fire is sacred. Not just for warmth or food, but as a boundary between this world and the one just behind it. You feed it wood, yes, but also offerings. Hair. Teeth. A little fat from a kill. A cracked egg. Anything that feels like an apology. For what? For existing, maybe. For stealing heat that might have belonged to something older, angrier. You don't speak while feeding the fire. You let it eat in silence. And if it pops too loudly or the smoke turns white, you leave. Quickly. Children are taught early what not to touch. Certain bones. Certain stones. Certain plants whose leaves resemble hands, curled into warning. You don't ask why. You just don't. The last person who asked is buried behind the thorn thicket, face down, with a cracked rib cage. Accidents happen. Dreams are omens. Everyone agrees on that. If you dream of a bird flying backward, it means birth. If you dream of falling and never hitting the ground, it means someone close to you will. You carve these dreams into bark or charcoal the cave walls. Not to remember. To warn. The dreams aren't private. They belong to the group. If your nightmare means death, everyone needs to prepare. The shaman, if your group has one, is a half-wild figure who talks to trees and eats the mold that grows on old food. They don't bathe. They don't speak in full sentences. They stare too long and mutter in sleep. But when they say the spirits are restless, you light another fire and don't sleep near the edge of camp. You've seen taboos punish people. A man once pissed near a burial site. He limped for the rest of his short life. A woman touched the wrong skull during a cleansing ritual. Her child was born still and cold. Coincidence, maybe. But no one tested it twice. You're not superstitious. You're experienced. There's a difference. The moon matters. It tells you when to plant, when to hunt, when to stay inside and not breathe too loudly. A full moon means vision, revelation. A new moon means danger. The in-between is transition. You mark it with charcoal on your forearm, one line for each phase, until your skin tells time better than the stars. You carve symbols into tools. Not because they are pretty, but because a spear with 3 lines cut into its shaft never misses. Probably. Maybe. The last time someone used one without markings, they came back with an empty hand and a bite that went green. You wear charms, animal teeth, bits of shell, knotted hair, carved wood soaked in blood. Each one has a story, passed down by breath, altered by fear. If you lose one, you don't sleep until it's replaced. The spirits notice when you're careless. You don't make eye contact with the dying. You don't say their name until 3 days after burial. You don't whistle near water, walk in a straight line after dark, or step over a sleeping person. Some rules are irrational. All are enforced. Sometimes you break a taboo without knowing. You step on a sacred footprint. You touch a relic. You wake up with a cough. The group looks at you differently. Someone ties a bone charm around your wrist. Someone else avoids sitting next to you. If you get better, it was the charm. If you don't, you die warned. You don't need proof. You need permission to keep pretending you're safe. That's what belief is. That's what taboos are. Not superstition. Sanity, wrapped in ritual, disguised as reverence. And if the bones say jump, you ask how high. Then you jump anyway. Just in case. There are no marriages here. No rings, no ceremonies, no declarations before firelit crowds promising forever. Forever doesn't exist, not when disease, famine, predators, and childbirth all take turns deciding who wakes up tomorrow. What you have instead are bonds. Temporary, practical, often affectionate, occasionally violent. You sleep with who you trust, or who you don't hate, or who happen to be near when the cold got too sharp. Sometimes that turns into something like a partnership. Other times it ends with shouting and thrown bones and the awkward redistribution of shared pelts. The group watches, always. Not because they care who lies with whom, but because social balance matters more than monogamy. Too much jealousy, and someone ends up dead. Too much possessiveness, and resources are hoarded. Everyone knows that isolation is a death sentence. So pairings are loose, fluid, negotiated with glances and grunts. A man who brings back meat is more desirable. A woman who knows which roots don't kill you in your sleep has her pick. Children come from this. Often. There is no talk of contraception. There is rhythm, withdrawal, a few bitter herbs that might thin the blood if taken early enough. But mostly, there are pregnancies. And the group accepts that. Children are not surprises. They are inevitabilities. Until they aren't. Until one is born too early, too small, wrapped in silence instead of crying. Or until the mother bleeds and doesn't stop, her lifeblood seeping into dirt as the fire flickers and someone whispers her name like it might pull her back. Birth is the most dangerous thing a woman can do. There is no midwife. No warm towels. Just squatting, groaning, pushing, and hoping your body doesn't betray you. Other women gather to help, or at least to witness. They know the sounds. They've made them. If the baby survives, it is swaddled in hide and handed off before the umbilical cord cools. If the mother survives, she is fed, given water, allowed to rest. If not, no one speaks for a while. The baby is raised anyway. Milk is shared. The group feeds what it can. Mothers are many. Fathers are unclear. Bloodlines are blurred and meaningless. You raise the child nearest you. You discipline the loudest one. You hold the crying one until it stops. Parenting is collective. Ownership is fatal. Jealousy is discouraged. Not because it's wrong, but because it's inconvenient. A man who thinks a woman belongs to him is a man who starts fights. A woman who thinks a man owes her loyalty is a woman who risks exile when he inevitably proves otherwise. Pairings form and dissolve like cloud cover. Some last through winters. Some last until the next hunt. There's no shame in change. Only in neglect. Abuse exists. Of course it does. Power always looks for a throat to grip. But so do consequences. A man who beats his partner too often might find himself sleeping outside the shelter one night, surrounded by silence instead of kin. A woman who strikes in anger may be feared, or respected, or both. Violence is not rare. It is regulated. Informally. Brutally. Sex is not sacred. It is not dirty either. It is necessary, pleasurable, social. It binds the group in ways that fire cannot. It releases tension. It reaffirms life. It complicates everything. When a woman shows signs of pregnancy, she is watched. Protected. Sometimes envied. Sometimes resented. Her body becomes communal property in whispers and glances. Not to own. To worry over. To guess at. Will she carry to term? Will she survive? Will the baby be strong or cursed or doomed from breath one? Children are proof of fertility. Fertility is currency. But it is not control. No one leads by womb alone. You lead by what you bring, what you teach, how you bleed when it counts. Love exists. It's not poetic. It's not sung. It's seen in the way one person saves the best cut of meat for another. In the way someone lays closer at night, even when there's room elsewhere. In how I search for each other after every hunt. But it's fragile. Like everything else. It bends under the weight of hunger and fear. It breaks when betrayal tastes. Like survival. And yet, it returns. Like fire. Like spring. Like blood. You don't call it love. You just live it. Until one of you doesn't wake up. And then, eventually, someone else moves into the furs beside you. And the cycle, like everything else in this world, begins again. There is no such thing as rest, only temporary unconsciousness punctuated by twitches, grunts, and the involuntary scan of your surroundings to confirm you are not being eaten. Sleep is not comfort. It's a lapse in vigilance. A risk you are forced to take because the body betrays you, nods off even as your ears insist they heard something move in the underbrush. Midday is the safest time. If safety is ever a word you can use. The predators have eaten, the sun is high, and even the wind takes a moment to lie down. So you nap. Not stretched out on some down-filled mattress, not behind a locked door, not with dreams of anything other than silence. You curl up on hide, dirt, or the thin reed mat someone dragged inside. You sleep next to others, piled like discarded laundry for shared warmth and shared scent. The human smell is a warning to the wild. Or so you hope. Your rest is shallow. You drift in and out, your ears still open, one hand always near a tool, your dreams mixing with memory and fear in ways you won't talk about. A child stirs. Someone coughs. The fire crackles too loud. You're awake again, blinking grit from your eyes, trying to remember what day it is. It doesn't matter. Days are the same. Cycles of light, dark, hunger, ache. While some sleep, others work. The shelter never stops falling apart. Wind frays the bindings, rain warps the wood, snow presses against the roof like a fist trying to crush you slow. You patch what you can. Dung, mud, straw, hide, whatever you have, whatever is dry, whatever doesn't already belong to insects. You lash it together with sinew that smells worse every day and hope it holds through the next storm. The roof sags in the corner where a branch snapped under the last snow. You prop it with another bone, sharpened into a stake. It creaks. You creak louder. Joints swollen from damp, knuckles split from cold, you keep hammering, nodding, layering. No one thanks you. No one praises you. Shelter is invisible when it works and unforgivable when it doesn't. A child once died because the roof gave in. Crushed under sodden bark and frozen hide. You don't mention it. But you repair that spot more often. Just in case. There is no central architecture. No blueprint. Just intuition and desperation. Shelters grow like tumus, uneven and spreading wherever space permits. You step over sleeping bodies, around stored meat, under dangling bundles of herbs, and try not to kick anything sacred or fragile. The fire pit is the heart. Everything radiates from it, including the smoke that blackens the ceiling and clogs your lungs. But it's better than freezing. Or dying. Or both. You share space with rodents, insects, the occasional snake. You learn which sounds mean harmless and which mean time to wake up and grab a weapon. The line between pest and predator is one of size, not intention. If you had the luxury, you'd rebuild entirely. Tear it all down and start fresh. But you don't. You patch. You brace. You mutter curses at the wind and smear more dung on the gap by the door. Repairs are constant. Like hunger. Like pain. Like memory. Tools snap, ropes fray, frames lean like tired old men with nothing to lean on. You don't build for beauty. You build to not die in the night. Sometimes you find old dwellings. Abandoned. Burned. Collapsed. You scavenge them for materials, careful not to touch anything that feels cursed. A bone placed wrong. A stone circle still intact. You leave those alone. You take the wood, the lashings, maybe a carved post if it doesn't whisper when you carry it. You drag it back. Add it to your structure. Hope the spirits stay quiet. When the nap ends, you stretch your back until it pops. You wipe your eyes with a hand that smells like mud and decay. You nod to the others as they rise. There are no greetings. Just the slow continuation of work, of breath, of maintenance. Your shelter holds. Barely. For now. You know it won't last the next real storm. You'll patch it again. Sleep again. Wake again. Until the cold wins. Until the roof falls. Until someone else does the patching. Or doesn't. And then the shelter won't be a shelter anymore. Just another ruin. Another warning. Another reason to never trust rest. They return quietly, which is either a good sign or a very, very bad one. No whoops of success, no songs, no children running ahead with stained hands and mouths full of berries. Just the sound of feet, mud-caked, blistered, dragging, approaching. The edge of the camp like ghosts that forgot to stay dead. Foraging isn't glamorous. It's not spears and kills and tales told around the fire. It's kneeling in damp earth for hours, fingers pricked and blackened, bellies rumbling, searching for something, anything, that won't kill you on contact. And now they are back, clutching baskets and sacks and pieces of hide repurposed into bags, their contents meager and mostly unidentifiable. Someone dumps a pile of roots into a shared bowl. Half are edible. The other half might be. That's the gamble. You'd test them on a child if you were cruel. Or on the dog, if you had one. But you don't. So you test them on yourself, as always, chewing slowly, waiting for the burn in your throat or the twist in your gut that says congratulations, you picked wrong again. Grubs. Bark. Wild onions so pungent they make your eyes water and your mouth retreat in horror. A single egg, half crushed. Tubers that smell like damp feet. A handful of berries already squashed and oozing. It's not enough. It never is. The foragers don't make eye contact. Not because they are ashamed, shame is a distant luxury, but because hunger creates tension sharper than any blade. Someone mutters about laziness. Another grumbles about going farther next time. One child whispers that the other groups don't have this problem. The fire snaps, loud enough to shut everyone up. The leader, if you could call them that, steps forward and inspects the hall. No praise. Just division. The old get broth. The hunters get roots. The children get the softest parts. You get whatever's left. You chew bark. It's boiled first. Softened with spit and false hope, then gnawed until your jaw aches and your stomach decides to pretend it's food. The grubs are better. More fat. You close your eyes when you eat them. It's easier. Foraging is mostly done by women and children, though the lines blur when everyone's hungry. They leave at dawn, sometimes earlier, before the mist lifts, with nothing but stone knives and generational memory. They know which mushrooms to avoid because someone's sister died eating them. They know which berries can be eaten only after boiling, only if they're ripe, only if the moon is waning. They know because mistakes get buried in shallow graves. Every outing is a history lesson written in scars. The return trip is worse. Hauling food through miles of uneven ground, dodging thorns, snakes, and worse, men from other groups with hungry eyes. You've lost foragers before. No screams. Just absence. A dropped bundle. A smear of blood on a stone. Maybe they fell. Maybe they were taken. Maybe they just didn't want to come back. You don't ask. You don't have time. You eat what was brought. You live another day. When a forager returns empty-handed, you watch how they are received. No one says it aloud, but you can feel it. The disappointment, the quiet judgment, the calculation. Can we afford to feed someone who brings nothing? The answer is always yes. Until it's no. Then that person sleeps farther from the fire. Then they get the bones instead of the meat. Then they stop returning from the morning trips altogether. Hunger enforces hierarchy. Success buys grace. Failure is exile in slow motion. And still they go out again the next day. Because they have to. Because foraging is not just survival. It's proof you're still useful. Still worth feeding. Still human. Tonight, the food is boiled into a stew that tastes mostly like smoke and resignation. You sip it slowly, trying to stretch the warmth across the cold pit in your gut. Across the fire, one of the foragers peels a splinter from her palm. Her hands are raw. Her eyes are blank. She doesn't speak. No one does. The children suck marrow from roots. The old chew with their eyes closed. The pot is scraped clean. Then licked. Hunger isn't just a feeling. It's a ritual. And tomorrow, the foragers will rise again before the sun, before the hope has had time to rot, and they'll leave. Quietly. Because there's nothing left to say. When the sun drops and the last scrap of meat is gone, when the smoke coils lazily and the children stop twitching in their sleep, there comes a moment that doesn't belong to hunger or labor or fear. It belongs to memory. To myth. To the only luxury your kind has ever afforded, stories. You sit by the fire, spine curved like a question mark, staring into the flames as if they'll blink back some answer. An elder clears their throat. That's the signal. The flickering circle tightens. The youngest lean in. The oldest lean back. Everyone else waits, suspended in the smoke. The story begins not with once upon a time, but with when the sky cracked, or when the first fire fell from the trees, or when your grandmother's grandmother still had both eyes. There's no script. Just rhythm. No plot, just memory wrapped in exaggeration. A tale of a boy who outran a bear by pretending to be one. A woman who tricked death into waiting while she chewed her food. A child who cried so loud the moon came down to hush it and left behind the wolves as punishment. You don't believe every word. That's not the point. The stories are vessels. They carry knowledge disguised as entertainment, warnings dressed up in wonder. You hear about which rivers flood without warning, which berries make your tongue swell, which dreams mean you're being watched. No one writes anything down. Nothing survives in ink. It survives in mouths. In retellings. In the subtle changes that creep in every winter until a story is both ancient and new. You remember stories like you remember wounds. Not precisely, but permanently. The elder's voice is raspy, dry as the tinder you used this morning. They pause often, not for effect, but because breath is a finite resource. Their eyes gleam in the firelight. Their hands move slowly, drawing shapes in the air that might be bears, or mountains, or the shape of something that died before names were invented. Some stories are forbidden until a child reaches a certain age. Some are told only when someone dies. Others only when someone is born. You hear one tonight about a man who laughed at thunder and was struck the next day. Everyone nods. No one laughs. That man was real. His bones are under the East Cairn. You help dig. The best stories aren't about heroes. They are about survivors. Tricksters who stole food. Widows who fed the group through slight and venom. Old men who pretended to be mad so they wouldn't be sent out to die. These are your saints. These are your gods. The fire snaps. Sparks dance upward like souls trying to escape the weight of meat and gravity. Across from you, a child repeats the last line of the story under their breath. Repetition is key. You don't memorize. You internalize. If the story dies, so does the map it contained. So does the medicine it hinted at. So does the rule it whispered. You once heard a tale about a cave that eats men. It sounded absurd. Then you found it. And you still won't go back. Memory is a collective organ. Stories keep it beating. You carry tales the way others carry tools, strung around your brain like charms, ready to be pulled out in the dark when you need to remember what poison smells like or which howl is not a wolf. The storyteller coughs. Their voice fails. Another picks up the thread. No applause. Just the seamless transition of duty. Like passing a knife or a child. Storytelling is obligation. Everyone listens. Even the half asleep. Even the skeptical. Even the dying. Because memory is more than survival. It's the illusion of continuity. The idea that someone will remember your name, your joke, your fear, after your bones have dried and your shelter has collapsed. A child interrupts, asks a question. Everyone glares. The elder nods. Questions are allowed. But only the kind that show you were paying attention. The answer is another story, longer, more winding. It loops back to the beginning, ties itself into knots, then ends without resolution. Because some stories don't end. They just pause until the next fire. You sit in silence after, the tale still echoing in your ribs, and you think, I will tell this someday. You hope someone is listening. You hope someone remembers. Because in this world, when the body fails, the only immortality left is being spoken of when the fire is warm and the bellies are less empty than usual. And even then, only if you were interesting. Or useful. Or both. At night, when the fire burns low and the wind stops whispering threats, the bodies inch closer together, not for warmth, though that's part of it, but for comfort, for distraction. For the quick, forgettable illusion of intimacy in a world where nothing else lasts. Sex is not sacred. It is not romantic. It is not hidden behind doors or paper promises. It happens in corners, behind hides, under fur blankets crusted with soot and memory. It is fast, instinctual, a release of pressure built up from too many failed hunts, too many dead children, too much waiting for death in a shelter that leaks. And yet it is not without consequence. The absence of marriage doesn't mean the absence of possession. Jealousy blooms like mold, silent, stubborn, and hungry. You've seen it before, the twitch in a man's jaw when someone else lays beside the woman he fed last week. The silence between two women who used to share food, now share suspicion. The glares across the fire, the unspoken calculations. Who is stronger? Who will the group support if it comes to blows? There are no rules, but there are expectations. You don't steal someone's partner unless you're willing to trade blood for it. You don't boast unless you want a rock in your sleeping mat. And you don't break a bond unless you're ready to sleep alone, with the wind howling in your ears and no one watching your back when the wolves come. Fights happen. Quiet, at first. A shove, a muttered insult. Then louder. A punch. A knife. Drawn. The group watches, not to intervene, but to judge. If the fight is over fast, it's forgotten. If it drags on, if someone bleeds, the elders, or what passes for elders, step in. Not to mediate. To decide who sleeps farther from the fire tonight. Some wounds go deeper than flesh. Sometimes the fire is moved and someone isn't told. They wake up alone, cold, a quiet exile for the crime of too much pride or too little discretion. Bonds form for survival, but that doesn't mean they lack feeling. Some people do love, in their way. They stay beside one another longer than necessary. They share food without being asked. They laugh more when the other is near. These bonds are tested constantly by hunger, by lust, by grief. The birth of a child often strengthens them, sometimes shatters them. No one expects fidelity. But betrayal still stings. Because even in a world where everything is shared, meat, shelter, tools, the heart still pretends it owns something. There are no ceremonies, no vows. But there are patterns. A man starts sleeping next to the same woman every night. A woman brings berries to the same child. A child begins to mimic the way an adult walks. These are your family units, formed not by blood, but by need, habit, and a flicker of trust. Occasionally, jealousy turns into revenge. Someone disappears on a hunt. An accident, they say. A fall, a predator. But you remember the glare. The quiet words. The bone knife missing from the pile. Justice is vague here. There is no jail. No trail. Just survival and whether the group decides to keep you close or let you fend for yourself. Rumors stick. You can kill someone with a whisper just as easily as with a stone. Accusations are rarely spoken aloud, but you can feel them in the way no one hands you food anymore. In the way people look past you when they speak. In how the children move away when you sit too close. Yet still, the cycle repeats. People pair. They part. They pair again. There's no shame. Just consequence. Sex is not casual. It's calculated. It's comfort. It's currency. In a place where life is short and grief is long, even a few moments of closeness feel worth the risk. Some don't bother with bonds at all. They sleep with who they want, eat alone, speak little. They survive longer, sometimes. They die colder, always. The group knows the balance is fragile. Too many disputes and the cohesion breaks. Too many alliances and resentment festers. So everything is managed through ritual tension, glares, silence, appeasement, the occasional scream into the wind. Social harmony is a fire that must be constantly tended, never trusted. And every night, as the fire dims and bodies shuffle into place, you wonder whose turn it is next. To fight. To lose. to wake up cold. Or not at all. Because desire may be natural, but in this world, nothing comes without cost. Not even the illusion of love. There is no throne. No crown. No carved staff or necklace of teeth that bestows power from on high. Leadership is earned here the way everything is earned, through scars, silence, and the ability to get others to follow you into situations that might end with everyone dead or marginally more fed. Authority is not given. It coagulates. Around the ones who speak last and loudest. Around the ones who know which mushrooms kill slower. Around the ones who come back with meat when others come back with excuses. You don't vote. You observe. You wait for the one whose word carries weight, not because it's shouted, but because it lands like a stone in the center of your chest. That's your leader. For today. Maybe longer if they don't get gored, bitten, exiled, or outshouted. Age helps. But only if it comes with usefulness. A wrinkled fool is still a fool. A wrinkled hunter who still remembers where the elk passed 10 winters ago, that's gold. That's survival in a thin, crackling human shell. Respect is conditional. You follow because it makes sense. Not because you must. Because the fire stays warmer when you do. Because the meat is cut fairer. Because the shelter gets patched faster and the fights end before they need stitches. But if that stops, so does your allegiance. There are no dynasties. Bloodlines are more decorative than functional. A good leader's child might be spared the worst duties. But if they are incompetent, they'll find their first sleeping mat missing one morning, and their absence won't be questioned. Leadership isn't passed down. It's passed around. Disputes happen. Constantly. Who stole from the shared meat pile? Who let the fire go out? Who touched someone else's partner too often, too obviously? There's no counsel. No court. There's shouting. Posturing. A line in the dirt and a contest of words, fists, or endurance. Sometimes you let them fight. Sometimes the group groans, drags them apart, and tells them to shut up and gather firewood. Conflict resolution is a group sport. If you're a leader, your job isn't to rule. It's to keep the fragile, fraying braid of personalities from unraveling completely. You mediate, you scowl, you ration. You take the blame when the hunt fails. You get the credit when someone doesn't die. Influence is measured in how many people glance at you before speaking. In how often your advice gets turned into action. In how quiet the group goes when you start walking in a direction that smells less like death. You don't bark orders. You speak, and if they follow, that's your answer. If they don't, you either persuade or walk alone. Alone usually doesn't last long. The wilderness eats loners like gristle. But some try. Some bristle under every rule, every shed burden, every glance of correction. They leave. Or they are told to. Exile isn't a word that's spoken often, but it's understood. You get a warning. Maybe two. Then the group turns away when you pack your things. Or they don't wait for you to pack. They just move the fire. And when you come back, begging, bleeding, bent in apology, they don't meet your eyes. You live in a world where survival demands compromise and compromise requires order. Not rigid. Not codified. But known. Felt. Flexed like a muscle that has to adapt every day or snap. The worst leaders are the loudest. The best are the ones who understand when to step back. Who knows who's watching, who's hungry, who's angry enough to do something stupid. They lead with observation. With preemptive fairness. With the occasional threat whispered too low for the children to hear. Leadership isn't power. It's pressure. It's the invisible weight you carry so others don't fall apart. And when you falter, the group knows. The fire dims. The disputes multiply. The foragers don't return. You feel it in the silence between the crackles. You know you're losing them. So you adjust. You share more. You sacrifice. Or you challenge the new noise. There's always a contender. A younger one. A stronger one. A louder one. They circle you with words first, then with glances, then maybe with fists. If you survive, you lead again. If not, someone else wears your silence. Either way, the group goes on. Because the group must go on. And leaders, like everything else in this world, are disposable. Useful. Until they are not. Darkness isn't just the absence of light, it's the presence of everything else. You feel it when the last ember shrinks, when the wind slips through the hide flap with breath too cold to be air, when every sound is a threat and every silence is worse. You can't see what's out there. You can only imagine it, an imagination. Here is a sharpened bone gnawing at your brain. There are no street lamps, no torches, no gentle night lights to push back the void. There is only fire. Fragile, flickering, gluttonous fire. It must be fed constantly, watched constantly, loved. Like a moody god with the appetite of a starved predator. If the fire dies, someone else might too. So the watchers sit. They don't talk. Talking wastes breath and invites attention. They poke at coals, shuffle wood, blink as little as possible. Every creak of wood, every shifting shadow, every low growl from the underbrush, maybe it's just wind. Maybe it's something coming for your meat, or your bones, or the last infant breathing. Nighttime predators know the smell of weakness. They wait for it. They circle your camp like hunger wearing fur. The old say you can feel their eyes before you hear their feet. You believe them. You've felt it. That skin prickles certainty that something is watching from just beyond the light's edge, eyes low, mouth open, breathing in your name. You've heard the stories of men dragged from their bedrolls by jaws stronger than understanding, of children taken while the adults snored. Of blood trails that lead nowhere because the forest doesn't give back what it eats. The fear isn't just of animals. It's of spirits, curses, dreams too vivid to dismiss. The shadows in the trees that don't belong to trees. The flickers at the edge of the fire that vanish when looked at directly. The ancestor whose bones were buried wrong, whose name was never spoken again, whose presence lingers like a bad smell no one admits. Fear is communal. It passes from person to person like a cold draft. One twitch, one gasp, and suddenly everyone's awake, weapons in hand, hearts pounding loud enough to summon whatever they are trying to avoid. You've stayed up all night before, unable to blink, mouth dry, ears straining for the sound of footsteps softer than your breath. It never came. The next day you slept through a hunt and nearly got beaten. Worth it. Because not being dead feels better than being useful. Children are the worst. They don't understand why silence matters. Why laughter kills, why curiosity invites death with a grin. They cry. They ask questions. They want stories. You want them to shut up before something hears. They don't. Not always. Sometimes they are too afraid. And that fear, once tasted, never leaves. You remember your first night alone. The test. The ritual. Sit by the edge of camp, alone, with only a torch and a dagger. No talking. No leaving. Listen. Learn. Survive. You made it. Others didn't. You don't talk about them. Night is also when memories wake. Faces of the dead, unfinished arguments, guilt that gnaws louder than wolves. You stare into the fire and see everything you've lost. Everything you might still lose. Sleep is shallow and full of visions. You dream of teeth. Of cold. Of endless. Falling. You wake with a gasp, unsure whether the noise you heard was inside your skull or just outside the shelter. It doesn't matter. You check the fire. You check your blade. You check that everyone else is still breathing. Then you try to sleep again. You fail. Fire keepers are chosen for their silence. For their nerves. For their ability to stay awake while their brain begs to collapse. You've done it. You've failed at it. You've watched someone else not often then watched them get dragged out by something fast, furious, and unkind. You tell yourself, it wasn't your fault. You know that's a lie. The dark is older than you. It remembers more. It has taken better than you and laughed while doing it. So you don't trust it. You feed the fire. You whisper to it. You beg it to hold the line. Just one more night. Just one more breath. Because in the dark, you're not human. You're meat. Glowing from the inside. Waiting to be extinguished. Sleep, if you're lucky enough to reach it, doesn't bring peace, it brings revelation, confusion, terror in bite-sized visions. You don't rest. You unravel. You don't dream the way modern people imagine, no beach holidays or unresolved. Office conflict, you dream in symbols and blood, in rivers that speak and animals with your dead cousin's eyes. And when you wake up, panting, heart pounding, you don't say it was just a dream. Because it wasn't. Dreams are the language of the unknown, and the unknown is the only true authority here. No one knows where dreams come from, but everyone agrees they mean something. A woman dreams of falling teeth. Someone's going to die. A man dreams of fire. The group needs to move, now. A child dreams of flying. Watch them carefully, they might not be around long. Dreams aren't entertainment. They are warnings, premonitions, messages from the dead or the yet to die. And they are treated with the same reverence you might give a fresh kill or a new fire in winter. Dreams dictate decisions. Whether to hunt or stay. Whether to eat or fast. Whether to banish someone before they curse the camp with their haunted visions. You can't hide them either. The dream seeps into your face, your posture, the tremor in your voice when someone asks what you saw in your sleep. And someone always asks. Because no one wants to be surprised by death when it already sent you a rough draft in your dreams. Shamans, if you have one, are the dream interpreters. They sleep separately, often alone, heads resting on carved stone. Pillows because that's supposed to attract stronger visions. They speak in riddles when you tell them your dream. You tell them about the serpent made of rain or the cave that breathed, and they mutter something about imbalance, about ancestral displeasure, about moving the sleeping mats away from the western wall. You nod, even if it doesn't make sense. It doesn't have to. You obey because obedience might mean survival. You dream more when you're sick. Fever dreams come in jagged flashes, heat and rot and teeth made of fire. You talk in your sleep. Sometimes you scream. Sometimes you laugh. And no one knows if that's better or worse. Once, a man muttered all night and died by morning, his body rigid and eyes open, staring at something none of you could see. No one slept there again. Sometimes a dream is too powerful, too strange, and it changes you. You wake up convinced. You're different. You paint your face. You refuse to eat. You walk alone for days until the spirits are quiet again. The group tolerates this, briefly. If you return sane, they listen. If not, you disappear. The unknown doesn't just live in dreams. It prowls in the gaps between logic and superstition. In the things no one explains. Why that one clearing always smells like blood. Why the birds stopped singing yesterday. Why the same cough keeps taking one person each month. You ask questions, but the answers are myths, half-truths lacquered in fear and shaped by experience. The unknown is managed, not solved. It's dressed in ritual, in taboo, in whispered rules no one breaks twice. The moon, too, belongs to the unknown. Its phases tracked with charcoal and remembered with bone talismans. A full moon brings visions. A new moon brings silence. You don't argue. You adjust. You dream differently depending on the moon. More vivid. More prophetic. Or more terrifying. And when two people dream the same thing on the same night, you don't call it coincidence. You call it a sign. That something big is coming. Something bad. Something that will leave teeth marks on the bones of memory. Dreams can fracture a group. If one person dreams of betrayal, suddenly no one eats together. If someone dreams of death, the group moves camp. If someone dreams of fire, you triple the night watch. It doesn't matter how absurd it sounds. The fire has no patience for skepticism. You don't own your dreams. They own you. They live in your bones and speak through your actions. You fear them, but you depend on them. Because without dreams, you are blind. In a world where no one writes and nothing is permanent, dreams are maps. Crude, haunted, often fatal maps. But maps nonetheless. You sleep tonight with your hand on a blade and your mouth pressed shut, willing the spirits to stay quiet, to let you rest without revelation. Because the only thing worse than a terrifying dream is the knowledge that it might be right. And the only thing worse than that is not dreaming at all. Because then you know something's watching, waiting, deciding what vision to give you next. And by then, it's already too late. By morning, the fire has reduced to a bed of sullen coals. The kind of heat that suggests survival, but only just. You stir before light hits the mouth of the shelter, not because you rested, but because the cold found the gap in your furs again, whispering through like a thief. You sit up slowly, joints crackling, heart already cautious. Because you know the stillness is too complete. The kind that doesn't come from peace, it comes from absence. You look around. Someone hasn't moved. There's always one. A shape curled too tightly, too neatly, unmoving while the rest of you shift and grunt and mutter awake. It's not always obvious. Sometimes they just seem especially asleep. You nudge them. Nothing. You nudge harder. Still nothing. You stop. Everyone else sees your face. That's the signal. No cries, no panic. Just a silence thicker than meat gone bad and a quiet shuffle as everyone gives space. You check. You already know. The chest doesn't rise. The skin is cold. The flies haven't found them yet, but they will. Soon. You pull back. Someone else mutters a name. Someone else spits. Not from anger, from tradition. The spirit is leaving. You don't want it sticking around. There is no funeral. No rites. Just a body, a shallow grave, and the efficiency of people who have done this too many times to count. The dead are removed quickly. Sometimes wrapped in hide, sometimes not, depending on the weather and how much effort people can spare. A grave is dug just far enough from the shelter to feel respectful, but close enough not to waste energy. You do not weep openly. Grief is a liability, like hunger or injury, something that makes you slow, soft, more likely to be the next body not stirring. You've seen people weep. Once. Maybe twice. They were told to stop, handed tools, given something to do before the sadness bloomed too far. Work is the antidote. So you work. You dig. You cover. You speak a few words, simple ones. Not prayers, but reminders. That this person fed the fire. That they once brought meat. That they didn't scream too loudly at night. That they belonged. Then they are gone. Just like that. You don't carve markers. You don't come back to visit. The ground remembers. You don't have to. Sometimes you bury more than one. Frost comes in hard and fast, and someone's child is blue by dawn. Or the water turned and the ones who drank too close to the bog start vomiting, then stop everything else. Or the wild dogs get into camp and the shelter proves more decorative than defensive. Death clusters like mold. You adapt. You bury. You move on. Death doesn't shock anymore. It just arrives, rude and predictable, and demands you rearrange your plans. When a leader dies, there's more tension than grief. Who takes their place? Who speaks first? Who gets the better spot near the fire tonight? When a child dies, the mother goes quiet. Maybe for a day. Maybe for a season. No one presses her. They've all known the taste of that silence. When the old die, there's relief mingled with loss. One less mouth. One less memory. But also, one fewer voice reminding you of what used to be. The dead are discussed only if necessary. As warnings. As examples. Don't sleep too far from the fire, remember Mara, or that's how Ergen broke his leg, and you know what happened after. Their names become tools. Their stories become structure. The living keep going. They must. The group cannot afford mourning. not in any sustained way. You sleep again the next night, knowing someone else might not wake. Maybe the one with the cough. Maybe the one who hasn't eaten in 2 days. Maybe you. You sleep anyway. Because if you don't, your body breaks faster. You curl tighter, dream less, breathe quieter. You hope the fire holds. You hope nothing waits just beyond the light. And if it does, you hope it takes someone else. Because the only ceremony for the dead here is continuation. And the only legacy is not being the last one to hold the torch.